Album 3, guys.
Album 3. Okay. So this is Super Furry Animals with Radiator. And in the opening montage, get a pencil out, Josh. You're going to hear Play It Cool, or you heard Play It Cool, and now you're going to hear Demons. All right, so Super Furry Animals Radiator comes in at number 461 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 42 in 1997, number 2,630 of all time. It's Super Furry Animals' second highest rated album behind 2001's Rings Around the World. Radiator did not make Rolling Stone's list, and Super Furry Animals ranked number 706 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums. Radiator is their second studio album. It was released on August 25th, 1997. We did previously cover their 1996 album Fuzzy Logic in Season 4, Episode 51, so you can go back to that. And I see here that they said Super Furry Animals were one of the first post-alternative bands, which is a term we have not really, I don't think we've come across that yet.
New label, yeah.
New label, post-alternative.
Does that mean that alternative's not around anymore? Is that what post-alternative means?
I don't. You know what? I think sometimes people just throw genres just to, I don't know, be cool. So we did cover them before. I think Josh covered them, but I don't think you mentioned this. I found it just, they were actually discovered in 1995 by Creation Records, the head of that record label, Alan McGee. We've talked about him several times before, guys. Do you remember bands he has been associated with in Creation Records? Ringing any bells? We've covered too much, not. I think. Yeah. John, anything?
Nope.
Okay. Other bands he's associated with: Jesus and Mary Chain, Primal Scream, Teenage Fan Club, My Bloody Valentine, Ride, and the biggest band that Creation Records ever worked with, Oasis.
All of those bands we covered.
We sure did.
Bands in there.
Yeah. So Alan McGee, he saw the band. He approached them and asked them after seeing a show, asked them if they could sing in English because they're Welsh, but he also didn't really understand at the time that they actually were singing in English at that show. Their accents were just so thick that he couldn't understand what they were saying. So, but yeah, early on, Super Furry Animals did sing in Welsh, and that was one of the things that labels and people would recommend, hey, you guys would be more appealing if you sang in English. So they did, kind of branch off and start to sing in English. Their debut single, Hometown Heroes, was NME's Single of the Week. That was chosen by guest reviewers Pulp, who you guys covered last week. So there you go. So Pulp was somewhat fans of at least of that song, Hometown Heroes. They also had a song called "If You Don't Want Me to Destroy You." It became a hit in the summer and fall of 1996. The "If You Don't Want Me to Destroy You" was scheduled to have a B-side of that that was called "The Man Don't Give a Fuck," which was built on a sample of Steely Dan's song "Showbiz Kids." But Donald Fagen from Steely Dan refused to give the group permission to release that, to use that in their recording. So they weren't allowed to do that, but after several months of pleading and trying to convince him, Fagen finally relented, and "The Man Don't Give a Fuck" was released as a limited edition single in early December. It reached number 22 on the UK charts, which was fascinating because the song never really received any airplay because it contained the word "fuck" over 50 times. So the fact that it went so high without getting really much airplay was pretty impressive. So, and really since then, it's kind of become the band's default set closer. So if you see Super Furry Animals, you're going to hear them most likely close with "The Man Don't Give a Fuck," which, I don't know, found that kind of funny.
Did you listen to that song, Matt?
I did not actually.
Oh, okay.
I thought of it. I thought of it at one point, and then I got caught up with something else, and I never came back to it. So I should check it out. Not really much else on this album either, but the song "Herman and Pauline," those names refer to the parents of Albert Einstein, and the song refers to them and their young son Albert. That song was inspired by the pit stops that the band would take at different service stations on their tour. And while they were on tour, their Remember, Gruff Reese, by the way, great band names of these guys. I didn't go over all the names because I'm just going to butcher all of them. The Welsh names are really hard to pinpoint. But Gruff Reese, I get that might be the easiest one to pronounce. He would go through and peruse through these, different biographies about famous people. And so that was kind of how he decided to write about Herman and Pauline and Albert Einstein. So yeah, interesting band. Like I said, we did cover their album before Fuzzy Logic. So this time around, what'd you think of this one, John? We'll start with you.
Yeah, wow. I remember listening to Fuzzy Logic and enjoying it quite a bit. I remember describing that album as eclectic, and I remember it having a fair amount of psychedelia and sort of 60s inspired pop. This one has both of them as well, but if that album was eclectic, this one was eclectic, esoteric. This was a hard listen, but not in a bad way. It was hard to think about what the hell am I going to say on CTS about this album. I was trying to think.
That's what I do every week.
Yeah, but it was kind of like, if a friend were saying to me like, oh, did you ever hear the album Radiator by Super Furry Animals? Like, how would you describe it? Now, you can always, it's easy to say, for example, well, they clearly listened to a lot of like Beach Boys in the late 60s albums, right? And like the Zombies, right? Because all of that sound is in here, like chamber pop almost at times along the way. There's a 60s vibe with it. There's a psychedelic vibe to this as well that takes me back almost more to things from early CTS, like the Pretty Things, right? And those type bands, right? That we haven't covered in a very long time. So One Foot's in the 60s, but it also is a very modern album too, in terms of some of the themes that you're getting there. There's a prog rock strand in this as well. And,
I agree.
And yes, like almost like an acid rock, like sort of sound in this as well. And because of that, it would be very hard to describe this album to someone, because someone would be looking for specific bands that sound like Super Furry Animals. And I don't know if there's anything that sounds exactly like what they're doing. There are songs that sound like the songs that certain artists would make, but this is a very eclectic album. There's a lot going on in every one of the songs right here. It's I got a lot more out of this in like the headphones version of it, but I had to write down a lot of stuff just about each song right before I realized, well, that's a lost cause because I'll never have this much time to talk about individual songs. Because there's so much going on, I do feel like this is one of those albums where I ran out of time this week to truly understand all of it. I listened to it just about 3 times, pretty much 2.5. I ran out of time to get fully through the third listen. I do still think that there were bits and pieces that I had to like fully comprehend. I was going full Matt this week, Matt, in terms of like the amount of listens I would have needed. I would have needed like a Matt level of listens to truly understand what was going on. Because there was so much going on sonically, this was also the rare album that I didn't really explore the lyrics at all on this album, because I was spending a lot more time exploring like the music on this album. And also they have really and I saw this actually mentioned about them in a write-up of this album, so I don't think I'm stealing this because I made this observation beforehand, but they have very like complex builds to and like hooks themselves. They're not easy hooks. They're kind of they're not consistent in terms of how they build to a hook. I enjoyed this album. It's a thumbs up album for me. But I enjoyed it in a way that was much more I'm intrigued and interested than necessarily like I love this album in terms of how I feel when I listen to it, or like it hits me in a kind of way. I like it in the way that you enjoy listening to something academically a little bit, which can be used as a negative sometimes when you use it, right? Like, oh, like this album hits like my brain and I enjoy it that way. But I'm not using it negatively here. I look at it more like this is an intriguing piece of art. This is also the rare album that I'm like, I have absolutely no idea how Matt and Josh are going to feel about this album. I feel like that Matt will like it because some of the bands that I thought of are bands that are in Matt's alley. Josh, I'll be very interested to see what your take is on this album. But for me, it's a thumbs up.
Well, it's a thumbs up for me as well. I did like their Fuzzy Logic, I recall, and I like this album quite a bit as well. It is a grower. I agree with a lot of your sentiments, John. Like, it did take me a listen or two to kind of figure out what was going on. It's kind of like a retro 60s pastiche, but with a lot of like synth and keyboards that makes it more like contemporary sounding.
That's the modern, yeah.
Yeah. I got a lot of like, especially with the song like Herman Loves Pauline, a lot of like New Pornographers, which I love. So I think that was also like playing into it. I also kind of got some like ELO vibes with this album.
The Kinks was another band I wrote down that some of the songs sounded like,
yeah, which is great as well. Matt was nodding his head to the ELO thing. And so like these are all things that work well with what they're doing. I agree.
And ELO is kind of inspired by the 60s too, so that makes sense.
Yeah. I find the production very interesting on this album. Like you said, there's a lot of layering going on, and there's a lot of like different construction to the songs, like you said too. That's what's kind of makes it like a little bit complex and like difficult to parse at times. Like, it is like sneaky good though, because I think they have some really good hooks on here, and I think that they do have a gift for melody. I found myself being drawn into songs sometimes, even just like half listening, because they're like such good like songwriters and like crafting of the songs. Examples of that would be like Demons, which Matt picked. That's kind of like a Bowie-esque song. She's Got Spies, which is kind of got some Beach Boys with, but also with like flute. Play It Cool is another one that Matt picked. I like the hand claps on that. And then they're also able to like kind of play different styles. Chupacabras has like this punk delivery spirit to it. And then Mountain People, the very last song, I thought that was a really good song. That's kind of like got this, I don't know, this like anthemic pop quality to it that I really responded to. And so, yeah, I think on subsequent listens, I really responded to it and liked it. And this band is really growing on me in terms of like discoveries for the 90s. I really am interested to see what they do. And this has been a rewarding listen for me this week. So it's a thumbs up for me.
Yeah. It's one of those bands that like when I've listened to them, there's so many other artists that just come into my head, like all that stuff that you said. There's definitely Bowie, right? Like ELO, like, for sure, like there's that spacey, kind of rock going on.
Did you say more Blur?
I didn't say Blur, but yes, but Blur certainly would be on there as well. I think probably a more of a contemporary comparison would be for me like this sound. This is very similar to a lot of like Flaming Lips stuff, and also if you're just looking at other stuff that they like the Zombies. Obviously the Beach Boys, Manic Street Preachers are on here as somebody they're influenced by, Pink Floyd, right? And just all, even Sly and the Family Stone. Like there's just so much happening here, which of all this, it's kind of like this. It's like putting all these guys in a blender, just kind of coming out with like this sound. So I like it. It's really interesting to listen to this, right? It takes you in a lot of different directions. It just brings up a lot of different sounds, and they're creative, and they're using various different instruments, and they're doing some more orchestration and horns, and then they're doing more kind of like full-blown rock and fuzzed out bass and really interesting production, things, and kind of playing with their vocals and all that stuff. But I listened to, this is the one I had to listen to the most, and I still I have not gotten to the point where I would say I love this record, and I feel like this is an album that has a lot of those elements of stuff that I really like or really appreciate, but it's still. I would not say that, and this is probably true of Fuzzy Logic as well. I wouldn't say that either one of these records have hit me in a way that made me go, holy crap, I love this record. And I don't know if I'm going to get there. Because I listen to both of them quite a bit. And maybe, John, you're probably right. Maybe headphones is a better way to go listening to this, because this is that type of record that really, I think I might benefit from just sitting down, headphones on, close my eyes, and just like try to be more present with it, I guess, which is not something that I'm typically doing with these records. So maybe the context in which I am listening to this is not giving it a fair shake. So maybe I need to go back to it, but I do like it. I think that they're really interesting. And I think, like I said, they're certainly drawing from a lot of stuff that I do like. But it's yet to hit me in a way that makes me go, oh man, this is the new band that I really want to, get into. So that's kind of my general take. But it is hard to listen to this and not think of a variety of other things, because it's one of those things that's in some ways it's very much looking in the past, but also the future. But it's also unique. They're kind of doing their own thing too, because I would not say, even though they're drawing from a lot of other artists, I would not say that there's a ton of artists that I've heard anyway, or maybe that we've covered even in this podcast, that have really paid homage to those artists in the way that they are doing, right? That they are just agree. Like it's everything. It's like, let's take so much of the stuff from the 60s, 70s, 80s, everything. Like, this is, if you were to pick an album that's like, take all the albums that you've covered in your podcast and put them in a blender, you might come up with something like this, right? Or at least this would be an album in contention. And on the one hand, I appreciate that. On the other hand, I am wondering if it is too much. I wonder if they're maybe trying to be too cool, like they're drawing on too much of that, and maybe that's the barrier that I'm experiencing. I haven't really put my finger on it yet, but I suspect that could be at play here. But I certainly appreciate the effort, and I'm finding like little things here and there that I really like. But as far as like an album that I would be over the moon for, it's not quite there yet. So it's a thumbs up, but I guess the reason I'm kind of hedging this a little bit is that I want this is the type of thing that I really want to like, because I feel like it's a lot of cool stuff happening here. And it's just not happening yet. So when that happens to me, I get a little bit frustrated. But yeah, maybe there's another record that will get me into it, or maybe it'll take more time, or the headphones listens, or maybe it'll never get there and it'll just be like a frustrating band for me overall. But generally speaking, thumbs up. I think that these guys are onto something. I just haven't figured out what it is yet.
Maybe you need to work on your album intimacy, Matt. Is that what
I probably do? I need to be more intimate with this album. That's a fair point, John. Thank you.
Headphones would be a good start.
It is, like, and I have a good
beginner touch. But
and I do have a good set of headphones, one of those noise canceling Bose, like, full experience, kind of deal. So
not that this means anything, but it seems like they're one of the bands, like All Music, where like all of the albums are pretty high star wise, if you use that as a metric. So I'm like, but I agree with you. I think you feel about them the kind of way you guys have been effusive about other bands like Manic Street Preachers and stuff, and Bell and Sebastian. I think that you guys were higher on and like over the kind of like won over immediately by versus like needing to unpack it. And so maybe I'm just like a little bit ahead of you guys on that.
Maybe. Yeah.
Hey, I like this album.
No, we all like the album. That's. I'm not saying that.
I don't feel like I need more time to like completely understand why I like it, but like sonically, I like this album. I didn't feel like left like cold, or like, why don't I like this album more? I liked it plenty. It is different than Fuzzy Logic, though. I feel like Fuzzy Logic is a little bit more bundled neatly, right? Than this one that like the box has exploded, right? Or it's like it's boxed in, but stuff is popping out, like the tape isn't holding. There's there's things sticking out of the box. So, okay.